Hello, friends. Welcome to the second episode of the second season of the Schoolyard Podcast, brought to you by School Specialty. I'm your host, Nancy Chung, a fun-loving teacher and content creator, also known as Fancy Nancy in Fifth on social media, and I'm thrilled that you're here. A special shout out to School Specialty, who offers essential educational supplies and complete learning environment solutions to help you transform more than classrooms. This is the Schoolyard Podcast, a podcast by educators for educators where the magic of learning unfolds. We've all heard of the phrase play hard, work hard, right? But what if playing was part of the work? In today's episode of the Schoolyard Podcast, we dive into the dynamic world of play-based learning with two esteemed guests, Kathy Descamps, PE subject matter expert, and Jennifer Fernandez, early childhood subject matter expert from School Specialty. Together, we will explore what play-based learning looks like across different age groups, highlighting its transformative benefits for student engagement, social skills, and cognitive development. And listeners will gain practical insights into how to seamlessly incorporate play-based learning strategies into their classrooms, regardless of grade level. With a blend of expert advice, real-world examples, and lively discussion, this episode promises to be both entertaining and educational, offering invaluable tips and inspiration for educators looking to foster a more interactive and joyful learning environment. Welcome to the Schoolyard, Kathy, and welcome back, Jennifer.
Thanks, Nancy. Good to be here.
Hi, good to have you here. Would you please tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your background in education? Can we start with you, Jennifer?
Sure. Yes, I have been here before and so excited to be back. My name is Jennifer Fernandez. I live right outside of Austin, Texas, in a little town called Lago Vista. I am a former educator, little over 20 years in the classroom, primarily pre-K and kindergarten and a few other things scattered in there. I also spent much of my career as a bilingual education teacher. And then I spent about 7 years working for the city of San Antonio, Texas, where I was a professional learning specialist. So I did a lot of coaching and PD for teachers, early childhood teachers. And then I've been with School Specialty for 4 years, where I support our early childhood category.
Awesome. How about you, Kathy?
Yeah, hi, my name is Kathy Descamps, and I've been in the physical education, child's health and wellness industry for over 30 years. In my role at School Specialty, I've been here about 1.5 years now. I work with schools and community agencies that want to implement child health promotion programming and provide professional development to school and community agency staff in physical activity and nutrition education strategies. Also, many years ago, I worked as a physical activity program director for youth summer camp and for after school programs. And my work at School Specialty, I work with Jennifer in the early childhood space as it relates to physical activity, and also support our physical education health and wellness program team.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, I think a lot of our listeners might have an idea of what play-based learning is, but for those who are not too familiar, how would you define play-based learning?
Well, I'll start that off. Actually, I just did a training last Friday in Arizona for some early childhood teachers, and we talked about this. It was about making learning meaningful and engaging, and what to do instead of worksheets, and play fits right into that. So a definition that's in that training is that it's about allowing children to actively explore, to understand the world around them and all the new experiences that they're encountering. From my world of early childhood, it's, young children haven't been in the world very long, so almost everything they encounter is a new experience. And so through play, giving them that opportunity to kind of understand things and figure things out. The other thing I talk about in that training is that there are actually types of play. And this is something I don't even think I knew when I was a teacher. I think it was well after I was out of the classroom, but I think it fits nicely into kind of defining it. There's exploratory play, which is really just kind of like messing around with things, figuring things out. I think an example I saw was like, you see the babies that drop things off the high chair tray. Like, what's going to happen if I keep dropping this off the high chair tray?
Uh-huh.
So that's that exploratory. And then constructive play is kind of, they have a plan, a child has a plan or a goal, like I'm going to make something, I'm going to build something, I'm going to, create an piece of artwork, whatever it might be. And then dramatic play is, acting out, role playing. And then the last one is games with rules, which is really like kindergarten and older. They're playing games with rules, but a lot of times they're creating their own games and their own rules. I remember as a teacher on the playground, you'd see that a lot, some kind of tag and who is the monster and what would happen if they tapped you and that kind of thing. So I think all of those kind of play into how I would define it. But Kathy, you probably have a little bit different take given your background and experiences.
Yeah, sure. So from my lens, I'll be viewing play through physical activity and creating physical activity opportunities where children make their own decisions about what to play with, how they want to play, who they want to play with, and recognizing that children learn best through active engagement and exploration, as Jennifer mentioned, in a way that's meaningful and enjoyable to them. So what might be enjoyable to them may not be enjoyable to the child next to them or someone else in the play area, but we need to give them time during the day, and we need to give them safe spaces and freedom to play however they choose to play.
So you definitely see a need in this. So you believe that this play-based learning is very important for student development?
Definitely. I'm not a big quotes person, but I remember when I started my last job, when I worked for the early childhood program in San Antonio, our boss gave us a little framed quote. And that quote was actually from Mr. Rogers. I'm old, so I used to watch Mr. Rogers. But
I love him too.
young viewers, maybe, well, there was a movie just made, so maybe the people who do the movie is
everyone loves him.
I know. But his quote was, play is often talked about as if it were a relief from serious learning. But for children, play is serious learning. Play is really the work of childhood. And I love that quote because I don't think there's a better way to say it. We know, again, I'm going to talk from the lens of young children, that they learn by being actively involved. They have to explore and ask questions and be curious and interact with people and interact with materials, and just have those discovery experiences. They're very comfortable with the here, the now, the concrete. They're not ready for more abstract concepts yet because they're really using their five senses. Again, what I talked about before, like figuring out the world around them and making sense of it. And I think one of my other favorite things is, so NAEYC, NAEYC is the National Association for the Education of Young Children. It's kind of as early childhood educators, our go-to for all things developmentally appropriate and best research and all that kind of thing. But they talk about hands-on, which we always hear, and I think that fits into play, but they also talk about minds-on. And I think that fits into play too, because there is that cognitive development going on, as children are involved in play. Kathy, you have any different insight?
Yeah. In addition to the benefits that you just touched on, Jennifer, the social emotional learning, the cognitive development, we also look at it from the movement and physical activity, physical development lens as well: control, balance, coordination, gross motor skill development, jumping and throwing. And as kids' muscles are growing and developing, play is a way to support their healthy development. In fact, the American Academy of Pediatrics suggests that play helps develop healthy habits that not only promote health, but also prevent diseases such as obesity and diabetes. And the last thing I wanted to mention about why play and play-based learning is important is that research says that children that have a positive physical activity experience when they're young are more likely to be physically active in adolescence and through adulthood. So it's crucial that they have positive movement opportunities and experiences.
Mm. Oh, those are great points. I'm having a lot of like oh, sorry, I'll cut this part out. Can you share? Sorry, I always do this. I'm like, I know what I'm thinking. It just doesn't come out right. Okay. Can you share specific examples of play-based learning activity that surprised you with its effectiveness in developing critical thinking or problem-solving skills? I know in early childhood, I can imagine a lot of different scenarios, but I'm having a hard time as the students get older, what that might look like.
Yeah. Well, my example actually, yeah, is probably better for early childhood, but I think we can make the leap into for the older kids. So I do a lot of training on block play. I don't know, a customer asked for it years ago, and I was kind of like, that's not my favorite thing. And so I started doing all this research, and now it's like my favorite thing because so many things are happening while children are engaged in block play. And problem solving and critical thinking are two of those things that are happening. Like I didn't know as I was researching, to do this presentation on block play, there's actually stages that children go through when they're playing with blocks. And one of them is called bridging. So it's where you take like two blocks and you have to lay a block across the top and create a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And that's problem solving because they have to figure out like how far apart do I have to distance those two blocks to get the third one to stay and not fall off.
Mm-hmm.
And they were saying it's architectural post and lintel system is part of architecture. So it's like this pre-architectural skill they're building, which is really exciting. And then another stage is called enclosures. And so it's actually, they take the blocks and they use them to make like a circle or a square. And then you'll see kids putting like animals inside, or it becomes a garage and they put cars in there. But it's problem solving because they have to figure out how to get those edges to match up to actually enclose the space. And so now, like when I go into classrooms and I watch, children playing with blocks, I'm seeing these things and it's just so cool because I realized, I probably didn't even know this as a teacher, kind of what to look for to see those problem solving skills. And then we also think of like children, building ramps with cars, with blocks, and figuring out kind of cause and effect. If I make it taller and how do I make my car go faster? And I got to watch them. This is a group of little boys. This isn't too long ago. And they had foam blocks and they were working together as a team, like trying to figure this out. And it's so fascinating to be that observer. And really, they're playing, they're not thinking about it, but you're like, oh my gosh, all these things that are happening, they're cooperating, working together and cause and effect. But even for older kids, like right now, STEAM is such a huge topic and engineering is a huge part of that, which is problem solving and critical thinking. But when they're getting to create and invent and, you kind of give these open-ended materials and let them have at it to create or make something. When I was a kindergarten teacher, we used to pair with the 5th grade class. And so the 5th graders would come to our kindergarten class and the teacher and I would have pre-planned some kind of activity. And I remember doing some kind of STEAM, like we just gave them, recycled stuff and they had to make a rocket or foil, this is an oldie but goodie, but foil and make a boat and see how many pennies till your boat sank. But they do it together with the 5th grader. And so it was great, self-esteem building for the 5th grader. They get to be a leader. And then, of course, the kindergartners are just like in awe of a 5th grader. But then there's that play mixed in there too, right? So maybe you can steal that idea, Nancy.
No, I know. I love
already do it.
No, and when you were talking about the bridging activity using the blocks, we actually had a company that brought in these big, gigantic foam blocks. And they just told the kids to play. There were, like a lot of different stations. And I just thought like, oh, my 5th graders won't really want to play with foam blocks, but they were all over it. And one of the challenges was to build this bridge. And so they had to work together because it couldn't just be one person doing it. They had to work collaboratively and communicate to get that bridge going. And at first I was like, how are they going to do this without making it fall? But it's the whole engineering, the architectural piece. And I was really amazed. And I think that the students felt so successful after they were able to do it together.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh.
How about you, Kathy? Do you have any examples?
Yeah, actually, Jennifer, I can't believe that you mentioned kind of a peer teaching example. And if you'll indulge me, I have a similar story to share about how these fifth graders and sixth graders were peer teaching the younger kids. But as way of background, I mentioned that I'm a physical activity trainer for schools and community agencies. And the program that I train on is called the CATCH program, Coordinated Approach to Child's Health. And it's an evidence-based program that focuses on strategies to engage all students and increase their physical activity levels during school and out of school time. So I was making a post-training site visit to a school whose staff that I trained. But in their model, the staff that I trained back at their school location, they in turn trained their middle school students to execute this CATCH physical activity program. And so they trained the middle school students to be the teachers for the elementary school students and gave the middle school students, extra credit for doing this. So on my site visit, in real time, I was witnessing this play-based learning for both the middle schoolers and the elementary kids at the same time. So I'm watching the middle school teachers problem solve the class management issues, like, how do I manage my group size? And I don't have enough equipment for these kids. And what do I do? The elementary students aren't following my directions. And at the same time, while the elementary kids are trying to follow instructions about how to play this game. And so after the session, I sat and chatted with the middle school teachers, and one of them said, oh, boy, these kids, they just don't listen. And he said, I had no idea being a teacher was so hard. And I definitely had no idea what my teachers go through during the day. And he was exasperated. He was sweating. He had his hands up. He's like, oh, boy, these kids. And then as an amazing unintended result and outcome of this project, the real middle school teachers were reporting that their students were more focused in class and had less discipline incidents just because of that role reversal with them as the play teachers in the school setting, which I thought was really pretty cool.
I love that.
Stick with the best and set your students up for success with Post-it Super Sticky Notes. Whether they're jotting down lists, taking notes, or leaving reminders, Super Sticky Notes stay with them throughout the day. Bright ideas can be posted just about anywhere in a variety of vibrant colors. Post-it Super Sticky Notes. We've got your back to school.
Little learners have big needs. Childcraft has you covered with high-quality, safe, developmentally appropriate furniture, carpets, and learning materials for infants through grade 2. Childcraft, available only at schoolspecialty.com.
And we're back. So, going back to the question that I asked earlier too, do you see a natural evolution or a natural transition going from the play in early childhood all the way up to 12th grade?
Yeah, I'll jump on this one. Jennifer mentioned earlier that research suggests that about kindergarten age, play becomes more organized with rules around games and being more competitive in nature and playing these activities with whole groups and these group games. And in the elementary school, a lot of this play that I'm describing takes form actually during recess. And the Society for Health and Physical Educators, which is our professional organization for health and PE teachers, define recess as a regularly scheduled period within the school day for physical activity and play that is monitored by trained staff and volunteers. So recess, in my description here, is absolutely a critical part of the school day. So what it can look like in the older kids, it starts taking the form of structured recess or unstructured recess, with structured being play-based learning that is directed by a teacher or facilitator who help the kids in terms of choosing materials and helping them understand the activities. versus unstructured play, which gives the kids time to engage in free play directed by themselves with the equipment of their choosing. And from the physical activity lens, providing physical activity equipment or enough equipment so kids can choose what materials they'd like to play with during that recess period. So looking how it evolves into middle and high schoolers, their form of play or recess, they're really coming up with really creative ways to integrate recess and physical activity throughout their days. The activities can be student-led or teacher-led via mid-morning breaks or lunchtime intramurals or physical activity clubs. And I actually was reading about a really cool thing a high school was doing, that it integrated a mandatory 15-minute recess every day. And each morning, activities were listed on a board and with different room locations that said, okay, during our recess time, and you can kind of just say, okay, today I'm going to go to yoga, or today I'm going to go to the jam band, or I'm going to go to the art class and do some graffiti muraling or a 15-minute workout. But the rule was that the students and the staff had to select to do something. They had to give themselves permission to kind of check out and unwind for that 15 minutes. They couldn't go use their phones. They couldn't go do schoolwork or things like that. And one of the most positive outcomes of this high school mandatory recess was that relationships were being fostered between students and teachers that may not engage during the day normally together, because they both went to the knitting recess or they both went to the art recess. And there were students that might not engage with each other that were building relationships during this recess time also. So it kind of takes different creative shapes as the kids get older, but kind of the moral of the story is the value of that play in that recess time.
And giving them a choice too, and offering like
Giving
a
them a
variety
choice,
of that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
For
So like
sure,
that's kind of
for
like a
sure.
trend. That's I feel like that's kind of like a trend in education too. A lot of teachers are jumping on to this bandwagon of having like a slow start, having like a morning choice activity time, where they are given, whether it's like board games or marbles or like magnetic tiles on the wall, or whatever it may be, having that slow start to get them to kind of talking to each other, but also thinking creatively and kind of like starting the day that way. But I love the idea of all staff members needing to do that too. So we're not like checking emails and, checking our phones and, doing things like that. How about you, Jennifer?
Yeah, I mean, mine's a little bit different, of course, because my experience is more at the elementary level. But, unfortunately, I think we hear the word play and we think, okay, pre-K, maybe kindergarten, and of course, infants and toddlers, because I don't think everybody realizes that early childhood is actually from birth to age 8, which could be second, third grade. Our schools don't treat children that way. I think we kind of think, oh, pre-K, that's the end of early childhood. But I remember I taught pre-K and kindergarten for many years. And then my last year of teaching, I actually moved to second grade. But I took a lot of my pre-K play and embedded that in the learning. And I was kind of like the school clown. Like people would come and be like, oh, what weird thing is she doing? And they're looking at my classroom, whether singing or playing some game or whatever, like this strange lady that came from the early childhood center. What is she doing with second graders? But I will tell you that those activities, anytime I could, make something into a game or fun. I remember one time we read, there's a story called the Kapok Tree, and it's about the rainforest. And I think I had the kids make puppets of all the different animals. And then we did like a puppet show of this book, a reenactment. They were so engaged. It was so much fun. They just all were so into it. They went well above the expectations of what I thought was going to happen with that activity. But they were just so engaged. And then I think another great example. So one of my other weird jobs throughout my career is one year I was a half-day kindergarten teacher. This was in Minnesota. And then the other half of the day, I was the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade Spanish teacher. And I would go in and be the specialist for Spanish. So that was quite the leap. But again, I was always trying to make those Spanish classes just fun and game oriented and engaging. And I think the whole premise behind it, I do this thing sometimes when I do trainings, this game that I give everybody like a little quarter piece of white paper, and I say, write down a memory, a favorite memory from elementary school, pre-K, kindergarten, up to maybe fifth grade. And then we crumple it up and we throw it and have a snowball fight. And so everybody's throwing their little balls at each other and playing. I play some fun music, but then we start reading what's on the snowballs. And it's always, I actually just did it in this PD I just did in Arizona last week. And, it seems like I met my best friend in first grade and she's still my best friend. Or I remember the parachute from PE, or we did an experiment. This was kind of a funny one, experiment about water evaporating. And I was like, okay, that's a very slow process. you remember that to like watch water evaporate. But my point at the end is, okay, how many people wrote on their paper, I did a worksheet, I took a test, the teacher's lecture. Nobody remembers that stuff.
Right.
Because it wasn't meaningful and engaging. So we know, the point is that's the learning, right? What's sticking in our brain. It's just that fun, engaging, playful, the playful things that we do. So that's why it's important. And I think that can be incorporated in all ages. And Kathy gave great examples for the older kids. So it's fun to hear about.
Because so many secondary teachers, I don't mean to overgeneralize, but by middle school and high school, all of these fun games kind of transition out, and I feel so bad. And it's the really popular teachers, and popular for a reason, are the teachers who are still playing in their classrooms, whether it's a review game of a vocabulary lesson. Like when you're talking about the snowball thing, I'm like, what if high school teachers did that with like SAT words or like vocabulary words?
Sure.
Like they, like one group had to like write vocabulary words in one and crumple it up. And another group had to write the definitions, crumple it up. And then they had to like throw it at each other, and they just like pick up a random one and they had to like match it, like find your matching snowball. Or I'm just, right? Like, because high schoolers still want to play. So if whether it's a virtual game or a digital game or an actual physical game, I think, well, my fifth graders love playing Pie Face. I don't know if you know this game where you put the whipped cream. There's like a little cutout you put your face into, and you put like actual whipped cream on this hand that goes like this. And so I play like review math games where they have to kind of compete and they have to answer questions, and whoever gets the correct answer gets to turn, and the other person has to put their face in. And then so they turn it, and if of course it's fate, and sometimes the whipped cream in the hand gets, lodged into their face, and sometimes it doesn't. And then the roles reverse. It's like, so if it doesn't go, then the other person gets to crank it. So it's like, it's silly, but they love it. And so like, can we play again?
Oh my God.
But they're forgetting that we were doing math review games, but they're like, we want to play. So I see like my upper elementary kids still act like such fun little kids, when we play these games. So I want to encourage more secondary teachers to bring any type of play into their classroom. But here's the thing. So the people who say we don't have time to play, right? Like in this era of standardized testing and the academic pressure, and it's all about test scores, how would you advocate for the importance of play-based learning in the classrooms when administrators and teachers and even parents are very skeptical? How would you advocate for that?
Well, and sadly, we're just seeing that in many forms. Kathy's talking about all the cool things about recess, but reality is a lot of schools are taking recess away or shortening recess. We need more time in class. We got to bring test scores up. Really sad when I do this block play presentation, which I've done all over the nation. Inevitably, one lady or man comes up afterwards and it's like, oh, my principal made me take the blocks out of my classroom, or we can't have centers at my school, or whatever. And it's bizarre to me, because it's like, okay, education is not new. And no research supports any of these things that are being done. Like, what are we doing? But I think what the problem is if you don't know what you're looking for when children are playing, it might look like a free for all or chaos or waste of time. Like, to me, in early childhood, a great example is dramatic play. for a child to pretend they have a broken leg and they're hobbling around with this broken leg, their leg is not really broken. That's very abstract thinking. And again, remember, young children are very concrete, right? So when they're in that higher level, or I'm pretending to be a chef and I'm not a chef, it's this representational thinking that as they get older, what do we use representational thinking for? What you just talked about, math problems, these equations and symbols, they're very abstract. Or reading are just abstract symbols on a page or a screen, but we have to make meaning from those. And so we need to be able to have that higher level thinking, and play is a great way, to make that happen. And I think the other thing that makes me really sad is that I feel like childhood keeps getting shortened, especially now with technology. Kids just are learning more faster. There's more information out there. They learn it younger. And childhood is just such a short period of your time of your life. Like, why do we want to rob children of that? I look, my own kids are in their 20s, and my youngest is supposed to graduate from college in December, cross our fingers.
Wow.
But, there's this hurry, like, I got to get through school and grow up. And I'm like, why? So you can go find a job and you have to pay rent and get a car payment.
Right.
And, like, let's enjoy childhood and embrace that and the play and the fun. What's the rush, I guess is my point.
Yeah. So, Kathy and Jennifer, what's the biggest myth about play-based learning? How would you show someone that a playful classroom isn't just chaos and noise?
So I can take that one first. It reminds me of this poem that a friend of mine introduced me to. I think it was a book. The author's Anita Wadley, but it's called "Today I Am a Child and My Work is Play." And basically, she goes through talking about different things you see children doing, like, it might just look like the child's playing with a doll, or that they're just playing, but really they're going to be a mother and father someday. Maybe it looks like this child is playing with a puzzle. They're just playing. Oh no, maybe they're going to be a business person that needs to solve problems someday. And it goes through that in all different kinds of play. So really, like, linking that, to the untrained eye that walks in and sees a child playing with something, not really understanding what's really going on. So I love that, because it's a very concrete way to link play to, future careers and things that children will be doing as they get older. But the other thing I think is you have to be looking for, I don't know, I call them the soft skills. I don't know if that's still what they call them, but like, what are employers looking for down the road? They want people who are creative and curious and innovative, think outside the box, persistent, cooperate and collaborate. And all of that is happening when children are playing. They're practicing those skills. So, again, if you're the untrained eye, it just looks like, holy smokes, what's going on in here? But if you really sit down and engage and look and play and listen, you start to see some of those things that are really going on. And I don't know, Kathy, what's your take on this?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I really like your point about an untrained eye. We were talking about physical activity and play for some of the older kids, and how that takes form in recess. And recess is supposed to be loud, and recess is supposed to look chaotic. And like you said, to the untrained eye, it just looks kind of like it's just, we're passing the time until we have to get to the next period. But a well-organized recess is a structured activity that's built into the schedule, that has transitions timed out, and has equipment, and it has zones, and it has trained staff that are monitoring the recess. So there is some, real rationale behind that noise and that chaos. But the point I wanted to make was that recess is important. It's not an extra thing. And Jennifer mentioned earlier that recess is one of the things that's often cut when schools are looking to cut activities and to use that time for other subject areas. The CDC recommends that children in grades K to 12 get 60 minutes a day of physical activity, and play and movement through recess count towards these daily 60 minutes. And recess is not a replacement for physical education, and it should not be held back as a student punishment. So for students that do not have daily physical education, recess may be the only opportunity they have to be physically active during the entire school day. So it's a really important piece of the school day for students. One other thing I want to mention, as important as the topic of play is who you might play with. And having student-teacher play engagement opportunities, family and intergenerational play opportunities, inclusive play, I should say, for all students, as exemplified in the Special Olympics Unified Champion School Program. Research shows that play can create and strengthen relationships. And research also showed that kids who are more familiar with each other actually play and move more in these recess spaces and in these physical activity spaces. It's also a reason why we see a trend in play at work. Managers are searching for ways to foster teamwork. And so as important it is for children to play, it's as equally important for adults to play as well for health and well-being.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a segment on our podcast called Tag Your It, where writers write in questions for our guests to answer. And today's question comes from CCK, and her question is, if you could invent a magical playground equipment that teaches a specific skill or a subject, what would it be and how would it work? Kind of goes along with what we were just talking about.
That's right. Although she kind of stumped me on this one. I'm like, it's been simmering in my head. So my answer is not the greatest, but I just remember one of the most annoying things I had to do as an early childhood teacher was tie shoes. And I was tying everybody's shoes. So I would invent a hopscotch pad. And so as they hopped on each number, it would do a step in the shoe tying. And then I wouldn't have to do it.
I love that.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, what a great idea.
Oh my gosh. Well, this one kind of stumped me too. And so I actually started, Googling like, what are the playgrounds of the future look like, and different kinds of, what are the trends of the future for playgrounds? And I just started thinking about, how play is not generic, and nor should a playground be generic. And kind of that's been the trend of the, of days, current days and, past days, is that we're trying to make a playground be everything to everyone, and they're very cookie cutter. And so, the playgrounds of the future, are more like sensory and multi-level, that there'll be a climbing and other area at the bottom, but a flat play space on the top. They're doing those kinds of things in urban areas where they don't have green space, and they're building vertical playgrounds to give, extra opportunities to play. But being stumped, I had a conversation yesterday with my colleague, who's also a subject matter expert at School Specialty, Naomi, at Miss Hartle. And I kind of asked her, and I said, what do you think about this question posed by Cece? And, Naomi is someone that, I admire tremendously.
I love Naomi. She's so
isn't
fun.
She awesome? You work with her on science too, right? Yeah. So she's actually doing some filming all next week. So she was going to join us today, but, I said, Naomi, since she couldn't, join in, what do you think about, this question? And she replied something to the effect of, I don't know what the magical equipment would look like, but if it could relieve all the stressors put upon our students, that's what it would do. And so I'm just like, oh my gosh, and I just got to thinking, this is why I admire her so, and just kind of was like, well, that's the perfect ending to, the question as far as I was concerned. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yep. Can you imagine that magical playtime that will relieve any anxiety, any tension, and any pressure and any emotional distress?
Sure.
That would truly be something that I would invest in if it existed. Kathy and Jennifer, thank you so much for being here today and being such amazing guests on the Schoolyard Podcast. It was a true pleasure having you here and learning so much from you.
Oh, it was fun. It was fun, Nancy.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Schoolyard Podcast. Remember to pack your curiosity and meet us back in the schoolyard for our next episode. Tag, you're it. Now it's your turn to write in with a question, which we will answer here on the Schoolyard Podcast for our segment called Tag, You're It. Tag us on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter at School Specialty and hashtag Schoolyard Tag You're It with a question that you want answered. One question will be selected per episode to be answered by our featured guest and myself. And if your question is chosen to be answered on the podcast, we'll send you a very special Schoolyard Podcast t-shirt. Class dismissed.